Hey everyone, I'm Brad Hamlett with Cyber Risk Analysis Group. I do consulting mostly for water utilities and commercial real estate firms. If I'm not coming through clearly, if the sound's not very good, can somebody just let me know in the chat really quickly here? I'm not seeing anything, so I'm assuming
you're all clear,
okay.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Awesome. Thanks. So the briefing today that I'm going to give is about cybersecurity for water and wastewater utilities. So this is going to talk some about industrial controls, information classification, and just overall risks for water utilities and some of the regulatory frameworks that apply to water utilities. So let's take a look. First of all, why should you all listen to me? Well, very simply, my wife says I look like Matt Damon. So that joke works way better in person than over a Zoom video meeting. But anyway, so why should we really? Hey, let me tell y'all. I had my first. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of these like Zoom meetings and Zoom, just video conferences. I had my first in-person meeting last week. And I walked out of that meeting and I was like, oh, that was a great meeting. I really loved that meeting, which is not something I ever thought I would say about a meeting. But take away that in-person factor and like you just kind of really, start to crave it after it's gone for a while. But anyway, no, so why should you really listen to me? So I've been working in the IT field for about 20 years. I've got about 11 years experience in cybersecurity, mostly with the Army. I managed a $34 million portfolio of IT and intelligence projects for the Army. I was TSSCI cleared, and I ran one of the projects I ran was a counter IED program in Afghanistan. We were looking at hardware and software vulnerabilities of IEDs, and my particular area of expertise in that was looking at wireless IED triggers. So a lot to do with cell phones. I'm on the American Water Works Association's Emergency Preparedness and Security Committee, and I worked cyber in a VA hospital, and I ran their first tabletop exercise of a simulated network outage. They had never done that before. So what happens when the computers go down? And everyone was like, we have no idea. And so we worked through it, and it was a good exercise. So my briefing here is sourced from major news sources, major corporations, and other credible sources like that. There are lots of numbers out there that are floating around, and some of those numbers are not produced very well. So if you're not familiar with the terms IT versus OT, here's kind of a breakdown of it. There are different terms for operations technology. You might hear the term industrial controls or process controls. Those are two other terms for operations technology. So operations technology runs equipment. So it runs water pumps, water filters, it runs manufacturing equipment, like at the manufacturing building that Greenville Tech has on the ICAR campus. All of that equipment that's down on the manufacturing floor that we kind of look at when we're having our monthly ISA meetings. All that's run by operations technology. And the average age of the equipment is much older than IT. The investment in cybersecurity is typically low. The primary concern is loss of production on the OT side versus loss of data on the IT side. And patching is more difficult, and it's typically performed by the manufacturer, although that is starting to change a bit. So systems administrators. Systems administrators of utilities have a number of concerns. Only about a third reported being highly ready to respond to a breach. About a quarter report being impacted by nation-state actors. We'll talk later about the different hacking groups targeting industrial controls for utilities. Only about a quarter are typically targeted by nation-state actors. Those are usually going to be the largest utilities. More than half of all utilities reported a shutdown due to a cyber incident last year, 2019. So big deal with cybersecurity for utilities. So let's look at some risks for utilities. Two primary categories of attackers: nation-state actors and for-profit hacking groups. Nation-state actors, as of right now, are primarily doing intelligence gathering. They are looking for weaknesses they can exploit later to switch off utilities if World War III breaks out. That's what they're looking for. They're mostly using spear phishing to get in there, to steal network credentials. You IT folks who work for utilities or do consulting for utilities, y'all are top targets. Y'all are top targets to get spear phished so they can steal your network credentials. On the for-profit hacking group side, they are primarily in it for the money. They want to ransomware systems. They want to steal data. If you remember, Greenville Water got hacked earlier this year, and it was a for-profit hacking group. It was all over the news. It was a for-profit hacking group that did it, and they, I'll go into that a little bit later. I got a little more detail on that attack. They are using living off the land as their primary attack vector. So they're just grabbing off-the-shelf tools, using known exploits. Sometimes they're selling access. They'll set up a long-term, persistent opening in a network, and then they will sell that access off to other groups. That's other ways they can make money. So two primary categories of attackers. So nation-state actors, again, they are rarely detected. They're rarely detected, and I tell my utility clients, like, listen, these guys, especially folks coming out of Russia and China, like, they're so talented, you're never going to find them. I mean, you will spend so much money trying to stop these people, and they're so talented, they you really can't outspend their level of talent on defense. And so you're better off mitigating other threats other than this threat. And so in order, the top threats to the U.S. utilities: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. China and Russia are the top two most talented. And again, they're mostly doing surveillance, and they're mostly on the operations technology side. They're not really interested in stealing data, or stealing customer data and stealing payment data for profit. So let's contrast that with for-profit hacking groups. They are interested in stealing data and ransomware. So last year, 2019, the average payout for ransomware was $40K. This year, 2020, it'll be up a little bit. I'm guessing it'll probably be in the low 50s this year. That's my best guess. I don't know what the number is going to end up being. Data is also very valuable. So Symantec did a very cool study. They went on the dark web and pulled a bunch of data. What is personal data selling for in the dark web? Social Securities, about $1, pretty cheap. Utility bills, other scanned documents, they can be, very wide price range there depending on what type of document it is. Cloned IDs and complete identity packages. Now, I don't know about you, but the last time I signed up for water service, they wanted a complete identity package from me: name, address, phone, email, date of birth, social. And so water utilities, a small water utility with 5,000 customers, if those 5,000 complete identity packages are stolen, you can run the numbers. That is a solid payout, just even off of a small water utility. So even those guys are at risk, and that information, like customers' information, needs to be classified so that it is kept more private than other types of public information that a utility might have. So let's take a look at some OT risks now. So over the last, from 2018 to 2019, the 2020 data is not in yet, but from 2018 to 2019, there was a shift from IT to OT attacks. Nation states appeared to be ramping up their surveillance, and some state-sponsored groups were even trying to cause outages. So again, about half of sysadmins at utilities reported an outage, at least one outage. And about a third were not detected. I'm assuming that they were not detected at the time, but they were forensically detected later on, because otherwise they were not detected. How is that number anything other than 0? So you know, obviously they were forensically detected later on. Anyway, another thing we're noticing on the OT side is increasing potency of attacks. So nation state attackers are getting more sophisticated. They are looking to damage things now. They're not just looking to do surveillance. So again, surveillance is still the majority of what they're doing, the vast majority of what they're doing. However, there is an uptick in trying to damage infrastructure. And nation states have begun funding individuals and organizations that are not, they're not government organizations or military organizations. They're, you know, like a private company that is simply just funded by the Chinese army, or, you know, something along those lines. And so that, I mean, I think that gives them plausible deniability. So it's probably why they're trying to do it. So here's an interesting fact. So if y'all remember the WannaCry and NotPetya ransomwares 2017 to 2018, I mean, massive damage, billions of dollars in damage worldwide. More than a quarter of utilities were affected by those two ransomwares. And those were actually military. Those were military technologies that escaped into the wild and were modified and turned into malware. So I don't remember. I think that might be in this. If it's not in this briefing, it's in another briefing that I have about WannaCry. They were really cool. I mean, I don't know if you read about them, but hey, if you haven't read about those two ransomwares, you should read about them. They're pretty cool, actually. But anyway, okay. So increasing consequences of attacks also on the OT side. So sysadmins are concerned about damage to equipment, about environmental incidents, and about stealing high-value information. I've got a case study later on in the briefing about a utility out in Colorado who got a lot of their high-value information ransomwared, and they caused serious issues. I don't think they responded to that attack very well. Hopefully, no one here is from Colorado. I picked a utility like, okay, you know, what's the wrong way to respond to this? I picked a utility way out in Colorado, nowhere near upstate South Carolina. So hopefully, you know, because my business is around here, I don't want to, you know, like say anything negative about anybody around here. So anyway, hopefully nobody's from Colorado. But anyway, so that was OT risks. Let's move on to IT risks. On the top, you've probably all seen cyber awareness. The numbers are very similar between four utilities, but these numbers right here are specific to utilities. So about 20% of utility employees receive malicious email. The vast majority of it is either office formats or executables. And you know, I think the number of malicious emails for the utility industry is slightly higher than average, and it's probably because the utility industry is a big target. They've got lots of money and they've got lots of customer data, and so that just makes them a big target. Malicious email subjects, the top two are either about a bill or about those email delivery failure fake emails, which those are like, I gotta tell you, the email delivery failure, those have got to be, those are up there. I can't decide if it's that one or the fake password reset emails that are like my favorite phishing emails. But like I keep like a record. I go through my spam folder in Google and to find like amazing, you know, malicious emails. And there was an extortion one I found last year that involved a major porn site. And I mean, just like they're getting so creative these days with malicious emails that I keep an archive of them because they're really funny. Occasionally I use them. I teach computer science classes at Greenville Tech, and I really enjoy that a lot. And so I use those emails as examples in my classes. The students like them. I leave them out of my corporate presentations though. I try to just focus more on a single topic. So there are a lot of emerging malware risks, wormable ransomware that goes after Office files. So like one of my clients last week, my endpoint detection and response software that I had just installed it on their endpoints, and it stopped one of these attacks exactly, a wormable ransomware that went after Word and Excel files, and so this is real. It is happening. It happened last week. But it was blocked. It never, the EDR just stopped it, and it never caused any issues. I just got an alert that it was blocked, and it's like happy times. So that's why this software is great and it works. And there's also some wormable malware out there that mimics Olympic Destroyer. So if you don't know, Olympic Destroyer is another really cool piece of malware. It targeted the South Korean Olympics, and it was everyone initially thought it was made by North Korea, but then upon further analysis, the malware actually appeared to be kind of faked to make it look like it was made by the North Koreans to attack the South Koreans, when in fact somebody else most likely made it. I don't think anyone's really 100% sure who did it, but best guesses are just Russians and Chinese just trying to create chaos and create problems for the United States. But this malware, it targets Office macros. So just don't. I really encourage, like all of my clients, I encourage them to stop using macros. If you have any old Excel workbooks out there, reformat them to get rid of macros. You don't need them anymore. The old Word documents, get rid of them. Just try and not use macros at all, because they're really not good and really dangerous. Connected devices are another top danger, because people usually forget to update them. It's really easy for employees to just come in and, if they don't have good Wi-Fi in a room, they just plug in a off-the-shelf consumer AP into the network, and if you don't have port security, it'll run internet through Wi-Fi. It won't trip anything. So anyway, so this can be a problem. Cameras can also be a problem. A lot of these connected devices, people don't update the default admin username and passwords on them. Like when I moved into my house that I'm in now last year, it had a camera system in it, and I wanted to run the camera system myself instead of getting a company to run it. I want to do it myself, so I logged into the camera controller, and I just used the default admin username and password from the manufacturer, and like the company that had installed all this equipment never changed it. So so good for me, I could get right in. So but just kind of blew my mind that they didn't change it. But that's just kind of I guess us in the cybersecurity field, that's just how we think. So it's very easy for malware to use a router or a camera or another connected device as a point of ingress and then spread into the rest of the network. And they can jump from IT to OT systems, particularly if the networks aren't segmented. It's very, very easy for them to escape over into the OT network. Another risk is supply chain attacks. So infecting devices before they leave the manufacturer. Funny example of the, well, not very funny, but just a unusual example of this was Schneider, some Schneider inverters last year shipped with infected USB media, and they had to quick put out an alert, recall it, send out new media. So anyway, that to me, that's pretty interesting. So yeah, the attackers will compromise the manufacturer and then infect their products before they leave the factory. And then vendors and third parties, they're vulnerable to compromise. Duke Energy's billing system was compromised in 2018, and it was through, they had subcontracted their billing to Energy Services Group, and it was actually the vendor that got compromised, and lots of Duke customers' data got stolen. So there are a number of recommendations out there from industry. And that is, the number one recommendation is know all the assets that are on your OT network. Take an inventory of everything that's on there so you know what's on there, software and hardware inventory. Look for cyber solutions that are specific to the devices, and boost your capabilities for rapid detection of security breaches. So another main recommendation is to look at organizational failures and correct those. So system administrators at utilities reported about 42%, a little less than half reported that there's no clear ownership of IT versus OT systems. Like somebody needs to own the system and be responsible for securing it. Another major organizational failure is lack of human capital in cyber and lack of cyber training for personnel. You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've just seen it. I've seen it so much, you know, don't click on the link in the email, just all this basic cybersecurity training. But how much of this training is specifically targeted to people running PCS or ICS systems on the OT side of the network? You know, how much of that? I don't know. Not much from the utilities I've talked to. You know, most of them have basic cyber awareness, but very few have an OT specific cybersecurity training class for their employees, which I have. And if you want it, I'll be happy to give it to you. So, okay. So another recommendation from industry is to, instead of using a compliance-based approach, use a risk-based approach. So there are a ton of regulations out there, a ton of laws. You can use compliance with those laws as just kind of a starting point to move to a risk-based approach. Start with your high-value assets. Prioritize your investments in cybersecurity, your cyber spending on mitigating the biggest risk for the highest value assets. And that will get you the best bang for your buck in terms of cyber spending. So there are basically an unlimited number of regulatory frameworks out there that apply to utilities. You even see HIPAA in there. Like, yeah, that does, because lots of utilities collect medical information on their employees through their human resources department via health insurance. I mean, it is an alphabet soup of regulations that are out there. However, here's the top two: America's Water Infrastructure Act, which is a new law, and PCI DSS, which y'all have probably all heard of that one, because that one is super, super widespread and popular. So PCI, there's 4 compliance levels, and it requires scans and vulnerability mitigation. For AWIA, America's Water Infrastructure Act, there are 12 security domains, and it is mapped to recommendations from the American Water Works Association. And the primary focus is high value assets. So what you can do is you use AWIA compliance to focus on your high risk, high value assets, right? And then you use PCI compliance to focus on protecting your customer data. And my primary recommendation is use those 2 frameworks as a starting point to adopt a risk-based approach. So first thing you need to do is do a vulnerability assessment that will check all the boxes for both AWIA and PCI compliance. You can do it in one risk assessment. Start a vulnerability management program. You need to do quarterly network scans. That's a PCI requirement. And you mitigate your critical and high risks. Those network scans are going to spit out basically an unlimited number of things for you to mitigate. And there's no way to get to all of them. So you just do your criticals and highs. And for IT and OT network security, look at cloud-based options. There are cloud-based network defense systems, cloud-based endpoint defense. There are lots of options out there to look at. Bring in a good third party who really knows how to look at your system, look at what's out there, and match a solution specific to your system. And multi-factor authentication. I mean, it's super easy. fingerprint readers are cheap, especially now Windows 10. The Windows 10, you can use fingerprint and PIN to get multi-factor. It's super, super easy now to do multi-factor authentication. Another big recommendation is to boost end user training. So again, 61%, more than half of all cyber breaches are caused by human error. This is a pretty solid number. I mean, I've seen this number. This is from Willis Towers Watson. I've seen a variety of numbers. I saw a number that was like, 93% of cyber breaches are from phishing emails. But then I dug into that number, and that number was produced by a company that's trying to sell anti-phishing software. So I don't know their precise methodology, but a number that's 93% from a company trying to sell phishing software, I would be skeptical of that number. But from a major cyber risk insurer like Willis Towers Watson, 61% is a solid number caused by human error. And so end user training is very important. It's important that it's customized specific to the business, and that it's customized specific to what the employees are working on. If they're working on ICS, PCS systems on the OT network, or whether they're working in the accounting software over on the IT network, it needs to be customized. It needs to be role-based training. Also, incident response plans are important. New IT infrastructure is great, new equipment's great, but when that new equipment is installed, you need to plan for what happens when it goes down. So what happens when you do this? Well, here's what training does. Let's compare two water utilities, Greenville Water and Fort Collins Loveland Water. And again, I hope nobody in here is from Colorado. But if you are, sorry about it, but hey, I have to see what right looks like and have a contrast for that. So Greenville Water, large water utility. It's our water utility right here in Greenville. They were breached by malware through a phishing email earlier this year, 2020. That breach was isolated to a single billing system on the IT side of the network. The attack never traversed over to the OT side. And it was isolated to a single billing system. The company quickly switched to backup options as they had practiced and as they had planned for. And the attack slowed down their billing operations, but it failed to stop them completely. They still accepted payments. They still processed payments. They moved to alternate systems. And I always tell people there's no such, no network is ever completely secure. No matter how much you spend on it, a network is never completely secure. So breaches are inevitable. They will happen. The question is, what do you do to them what's your response when it happens? And that's what tabletop exercises are for, executing that incident response plan. Greenville Water had one of those plans. They executed it. They had practiced it. And they responded like textbook response. And that, in my mind, they are an example of what right looks like, Greenville Water. Now, let's contrast that with a small water utility way out in Colorado, nowhere near upstate South Carolina. So they were breached by ransomware in 2019. They had no backups. They had no planning for outages. No incident response plan, no tabletop exercises, none of that. They lost all their technical drawings, data, and files for 2 weeks. Lost it all. They tried many options for recovering the data without paying the ransom, and they were not able to recover their data without paying the ransom. It cost them $100,000 to pay the ransom and to make investments to recover from that outage and reduce their risk going forward. So that is a lesson why you should train employees, why you should invest in incident response plans, do tabletop exercises, do training. It can either be just a minor slowdown in your billing system and not really that much of an impact at all, or it can be complete work stoppage for 2 weeks. So that's kind of a contrast, and it's a good example of why training and planning are important. Another thing I encourage people to do is engage with the cybersecurity community. That's not the cybersecurity community. So just FYI. These jokes work way better in person, like, because, you know, I put this slide up and people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's saying like, and then I flash, not the cybersecurity community. Oh, right. Okay. Got it. So yeah, where the cybersecurity community is actually nice and friendly. Yeah, and like I can't see anybody's, you know, reactions, like facial reactions. So anyway, like I'm zoomed out. I got to tell you, like I'm zoomed out. I'm ready for, you know, COVID to go away. But anyway, yeah. So I really encourage everyone to engage with the cybersecurity community. We're actually nice and friendly. People like us. So yeah, and really, I mean, you really can mitigate your risks by engaging with us, you know, either contracting or hiring cyber folks, getting training, planning, things like that. I'm right on the money. So I'm right on time. So good. Ended at 11:45. So man, that was like up, nope, 11:46. I was 1 minute over. My bad. So you can feel free to contact me anytime about these issues we discussed here, or if you need any consulting or training or anything for your business, feel free to reach out to me. That's my personal cell there. Text me or call me on that, and then you can reach me on my email there at any time. I'll give you a minute for questions. I'll pull up the chat window here and see if any questions come in. Mark Johnson, what's up? How you doing? No, just water utilities. Electric utilities are actually pretty solid, I've found. They're ahead of water utilities, and AWIA is a pretty new law that applies to water utilities, so they're kind of complying with that law right now, doing risk assessments, spinning up vulnerability management programs, spinning up training programs, stuff like that. Cool. Doesn't look like any other questions, so I'm going to go on mute. I really appreciate everyone's time, and yeah, really appreciate. Oh, I got another question here. So, yes, yep, yeah, late to the game. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So security, it's like yeah, security is an afterthought, and I mean, I guess that makes sense because when you're making a piece of equipment, you want the piece of equipment to be as reliable as possible and churn out as many widgets or as many gallons of water as possible. And so really, I mean, yeah, security is just kind of, you know, kind of an afterthought, but one of the recommendations out of the American Water Works Association is planning for security at the beginning of the equipment life cycle, during the design phase of the equipment life cycle. So this, I think it'll change over time, but it's not quite there yet. Oh, there's a million. Yeah, there's a million of them out there. Yeah, different brands and stuff. Cool. Well, yep, doesn't look like any other questions. So yeah, I'm going to go on mute. I really appreciate Mike Holcomb, all the work he did to, you know, to put all this together. I know it was a huge pain having to shift this from in-person to virtual, and Anyway, yeah, I really appreciate Mike Holcomb and all the work you did to make this happen. This is a great, Upstate S is a fantastic group. I really like it a lot, and really appreciate, Mike organizing and running everything. So it was, and I really appreciate all y'all's time listening to my briefing, and really hope to see y'all again at one of these meetings here pretty soon. So I'm gonna go on mute now. Thanks again. Bye.